Hey guys, real quick, I want to give a shout out to my newest Patreon member, Brandon. Brandon's a really good dude who knows what he needs to do. He just wanted someone that will hold him accountable. So we sat down, made some goals, and I am micromanaging his ass to make sure he follows through on those goals. If you need help with something like that, I can help. Join the Patreon today. And here's the show.
You're listening to the premier podcast for men who want to not only be better with women, but want to be better men in general. This is the Come On Man podcast. And here's your host, Paul Bauer.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another week of Come On Man. If you haven't done so already, please like, fave, subscribe, hit those notifications. If you are listening on your favorite audio platform of choice, please give us a 5-star review and actually write out why you like the show. Help us spread the word to other men. We want to get the word out, especially if you really get value out of the content that I put out all the time. Let your guy friends know, you know, there's always dudes going through crap in their lives, and they could use, you know, other dudes to point them in the right direction, to give them some answers. So send them my podcast. Say, hey man, listen to this episode. You'll really benefit from it. Also, if you really like this show, support the Patreon. There's 5 tiers available. I know if you listen to like past episodes, there was some other information that I put out there, but that's because I schedule all this shit out in advance, guys, and things change. The best way to keep up to date on what's actually happening, like right now, is to follow me on social media. I think Instagram's like the best place to follow me right now. But there's 5 tiers, and this isn't going to change. I think I've got this laid out exactly the way I want it. It's working out great. But there's 5 tiers now. The first 2 are really just, you know, for guys that don't want to invest a lot of money, but they still want to support the show. The lowest one's like $5. So check it out. Link is in the description, or go to patreon.com/comeonmanpod. All right. Joining me this week is the host of 2 really fascinating podcasts, The Thought Leader Revolution and a relatively new podcast called The Sovereign Man. The host is Nicky Billou, and he's a really interesting guy. He reached out to me and had me on his podcast at the time of this recording a couple of months ago. Fun interview, great guy, really big into spreading the word of masculinity and trying to bring masculinity back. So check out his podcast. But before you do that, check out this conversation I had with him, and I will bring you that right after these words. Hey, you, I'm going to make this real quick. I know you hate ads. If you like this show, if you love this podcast, if you think more men should tune in, then you should consider joining my Patreon. You will be supporting the show, and I get to help more men level up their lives. There's now 5 tiers available, starting as low as $5 a month. It's like buying me a beer, and each tier gives you better bonuses. Visit patreon.com/comeonmanpod to sign up. That's patreon.com/comeonmanpod. One last time, that's patreon.com/comeonmanpod. Help me help more men level up and be better with women. All right, joining me this week is the host of 2 really fascinating podcasts, The Thought Leader Revolution, which has been around for a while, and his relatively new podcast, The Sovereign Man. Man, look at this. I got new lights. They're killing me. Anyway, he's got a relatively new podcast, The Sovereign Man, which I was recently a guest. His name is Nicky Billou. What's going on, Nicky?
Hey, good to be here, Paul. Thanks so much for having me on, man. It's an honor to be with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So I was listening to your interview with Ryan Mickler on the Order of Man podcast, and you said that both of you and Ryan are Leos born on August 12th. You're not going to believe this, but so am I.
Shut up.
Yeah. Can you imagine the 3 lions getting together on a single podcast? Holy shit. We'll break the internet. We'll break the internet.
That's wild, man. Holy crap.
Right?
My woman is also born on August 12th.
Get out. Wait, your woman is? Oh, dude, man. My ex-wife was a Leo. Got a lot of, and then my ex girlfriend. So I had a girl that I dated for about 4.5 years, and she was a Leo too. It's just like you get that competition, man. You all want the spotlight. Paul, add a lion roaring in post. Paul's my editor. I'm Paul. I'm my own editor. Anyway. That's Nikki, awesome. Why don't you introduce yourself to my audience and tell us how you got into the podcast space, talking with various people about being thought leaders, and then also your new podcast promoting masculinity.
Sure. Well, listen, I'm originally from Iran. I'm a Christian from Iran. And back in 1978-79, the Ayatollah Khomeini and his supporters had an Islamic revolution. They overthrew the relatively secular government of the Shah. And my late father, God rest his soul, decided that it wasn't going to be the greatest place to raise his Christian family. So he moved us to the West. And I thank God every day for that, because there's a lot of people today that say, oh my God, America is such a racist place, such a terrible place, such an intolerant place. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. America is the single most tolerant nation on earth. You want to experience racism, come home. Because when I was 11 years old, someone threw a Molotov cocktail through our living room window with a note on it that said, "Die, Christian Ashuri scum." Basically, if not for the grace of God staying that Molotov cocktail from exploding, I'd be dead, and you and I wouldn't be speaking today. And that is government-sanctioned racism. It exists and is rampant all over the world, all over the Middle East, all over Africa, all over Asia. The folks here need to understand this is an incredible, tolerant place. And Edmund Burke once said, the only condition necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to stand by and do nothing. So the good men and women in the United States and Canada need to push back hard against these wokesters that are falsely accusing good people of having racism in their hearts, which they don't. The truth is, it's the wokesters who have racism in their hearts, because that one finger pointing out has three fingers pointing back at the real source of the problem, which is themselves. So, I wanted to say that first and foremost. My father, he was an entrepreneur. He believed in uplifting people. He used to come to me when I was a kid and he'd say, son, we fed 51 families this week, ours and that of his 50 employees. He was a very proud man. He lifted himself up from the bootstraps. He's a man who literally gave away houses, apartments, cars to people. He helped them get started in business. So my vision of an entrepreneur is my father, somebody who lifts people up, who does good things for them, who makes the world a better place. So that's why I became an entrepreneur. And that's why I decided to get into business, to serve entrepreneurs, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are good people, Paul, but they suck at selling. Suck is a technical term, of course. And what I mean by suck is that they're afraid they don't want to come across as pushy or salesy or with commission breath. So they don't go after the sale when they should. Yeah. And what happens is that they look for magical thinking ways of getting the sale. Oh, I'm going to do everything online or through social media. Well, that doesn't work. Not if you're selling something that really has some meat and substance to it. People will pay up to $2,000 online, but if you're selling something that's $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, that's not really going to work for you too well. So what we want to do is help these good people reframe it from selling to serving. That's number one. Now, I got into podcasting because my mentor, Mark von Muster, said, hey, podcasting is a good way for you to build some credibility and get out there. So I said, okay, took the coaching. I've been very fortunate. I've got to interview some of the top people in the world on my Thought Leader Revolution podcast. I've interviewed Ryan Mickler. I've interviewed Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen, who both created Chicken Soup with a Soul and sold 500 million books. I interviewed Dr. John Maxwell, the #1 leadership mentor in the world. I interviewed Oprah Winfrey's coach, Marie Forleo, Seth Godin, who's the #1 New York Times best-selling author. I interviewed Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank. I interviewed the founder of an iconic brand out of Canada, but you probably heard of it in the US, called 1-800-GOT-JUNK. It's a multi-billion-dollar brand. I interviewed the guy who created the world's largest real estate investment education company. He's had over 200,000 clients. The list goes on and on and on. That gave me credibility. It helped me establish myself as someone people ought to listen to. And that made it easier for me to get in front of the people who really need my help, to want to do business with me. And I got involved in doing Sovereign Man because, I went through a divorce, right? You and I talked about this offline. My ex-wife seemingly out of blue didn't want to be with me, and I was absolutely devastated. I was in a shitty place. I contemplated, is life worth living? Not that I was going to do anything about it, but that question went through my mind. And I got into men's work. I did a lot of men's work. The more men's work I did, the more I realized how many men are lost. And I know you've seen that too, Paul. There's a lot of men that are lost. They don't know what the hell they're doing. Married men right now that are they're good men. They're not fuckwads, but their wives are going to leave them because they just don't know. They don't get it. They don't know how to treat her. They don't know how to be with her to make her want to stay. And what this is doing is causing a devastating impact on our society. So I thought to myself, look, screw all this crap where they're dumping all over men and saying that men are bad, wrong, patriarchy, all the bullshit they throw at us. It's awesome to be a man. We don't need to uplift women by putting men down. We got to uplift them both. So I'm all about uplifting men, every man a badass, every man a warrior inside the work that we do, inside our podcast, inside our community. We're all about helping each man get clear that that's who he is, but we also kick his ass because men need their butts kicked. Men need to be challenged. Women need to be encouraged. Men need to be challenged. I mean, that's a gross generalization, but it basically sticks, man. You encourage a man a little bit, but you got to challenge him and kick his butt. You encourage a woman only. If you challenge her, she'll tear your throat out.
Funny how that works. There was two things that you said that resonated with me. One, you were talking about how America is actually one of the most tolerant countries in the world.
The most
right.
tolerant country.
Yeah. I think that's well said, because I used to be a sailor. I was in the U.S. Navy, and so I've been all over the world. I've been to some third world countries, and I think people that think that Americans are intolerant and have problems just haven't spent enough time outside of the United States. Because once you do, you'll realize just how great this country really is. I don't like to get into politics too much on the podcast, but that's something that there's
politics.
Yeah, it's fine though. But the reason why I wanted to call back to that was because there's this idea in the men's space, right, that women in the U.S. are broken and that they'll do better finding more traditional valued women in other countries. And it's like, that's not necessarily the case, guys. And two, a lot of those women are just looking for tickets back here because it's so awesome here. Right. Yeah. The other thing is you brought up sales. You brought up how important it is for sales. And a lot of guys are afraid to do sales because they're afraid that they're being pushy. But honestly, like, sales is the key to, wealth and prosperity. And it's a skill that we're not taught in school. You can't go to college and learn sales. You can't. I was lucky enough. I hated this job, but I was lucky enough when I got out of the Navy. I did door-to-door office supply sales for a while, and talk about hard. You're going knocking on doors. You're only allowed to get first-time sales. Like, we weren't allowed to build up a pipeline of clients and do repeat business. Like, our job was first-time sales to get them to be customers of the big company, and then the big company would take over from there. So like, our job was basically like an advertising company, and we did it by knocking on doors. And I would spend all day knocking on doors. Law of averages: the door you don't knock on is the sale you didn't get. And it's a valuable skill that I've taken with me in all areas of my life, because life is sales. You go to a job interview, you're selling yourself to a potential employer. I mean, it's stuff that men absolutely need to learn.
100%, man. Men need to learn how to sell, because life is sales. The best salespeople are kids. Daddy, buy me ice cream. Daddy, buy me ice cream. Daddy, buy me, no, daddy, buy me ice cream. Daddy, buy me ice cream. They will not let go until you buy them that damn ice cream. Right?
Or they get a whooping. Yeah.
Well, even after the whooping, they're going to make you feel guilty. Daddy, you hurt me. Don't buy me ice cream.
Right. They really are. My son is constantly, when we go to the store, he's like, "Hey, Dad, look at this cereal. Doesn't this cereal look delicious?" Like, he's presenting it, And I'm just like, Boy, that's a good skill, man. Just keep with that. Not buying that cereal though. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Right. So, my sons are 14 and 16. They're constantly pitching me. If you're going courting a woman and you're dating, you got to sell her on you. Mm-hmm. If she goes out on a date with you and you want to take her to bed, you got to sell her on you being a good bedmate, right? Somebody who she's going to have a good time in bed with, and somebody who's not going to, hurt her in any way. You got to be selling yourself all the time. And if you're in business, you got to sell. You're selling all the time. You are selling every day. You're selling or you're being sold. That's the way it goes. Mm-hmm. You sold me on coming on my show. You didn't even know you did it. I listened to you interview Dr. Glover, and I thought, shit, this dude's pretty cool. I want him on my show. I was sold, right? And you didn't even try. But that podcast interview, right? That podcast interview that you did with this man was a sales pitch. Was a sales pitch as you as a guest and you as a host. So I thought, I want to have this man on my show and I want to be on his show. So, you sold me and then I sold you, and that's how it is.
Yeah.
If you're a man,
it really is. And I have to do it. I have to do it all the time to get guests to come on my show, and you've experienced that. I've had to reach out to people that, Dr. Glover, for instance, great guy, but it took like 6 months for him to get back to me and stuff, but it was how I worded my email to him. I think that was compelling enough for him to come on.
100%, man. 100%. So if a man's listening to the show and he's thinking to himself, well, I don't have a sales job or I don't own a company. Well, you're selling all the time anyways. But if you do have a company and you do have a sales job, that's the kind of thing that I'm all about helping you be more effective with. So you're not thinking I'm too pushy, I'm too this, I'm too that. You're heart-driven, service-driven, but you're also getting the sale. You're asking for the business every single time. That's your job. Mm-hmm. And if you come from a place of serving, it should be an easy thing for you to do.
Yeah, definitely. Now let's go back to your Sovereign Man podcast. You believe that a real man is sovereign over his own life. He takes full responsibility for becoming a better man and owns his success and failures. Can you expand on that idea?
Absolutely. So it's funny that you mentioned that, but I was talking to a woman who signed up for one of our programs, and when she saw that I do a podcast for men called Sovereign Man, the first thought that went through her head is that I meant that we have sovereignty over women. I said, no, that's not what we mean. Okay. First of all, it's not men that have sovereignty over women. It's the other way around, quite frankly. Right.
For a lot Secondly, of men,
yeah. No, but listen, they like back in Iran, right, which is a traditional patriarchal society. My dad was a big cheese, a big kahuna. He made a lot of money and he was well known in the community, but my mom ruled the family. We bought a house where she wanted the house. Kids went to school where she wanted to school. When we were going to leave Iran, it was my mom that said, hey, we're going to Canada. Okay, that's where I want to go, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you think Dad did? Okay, whatever you say. Yeah, he's a big, tough guy. I'm the man of the house. But yeah, man of the house was ruled by his wife, worked like a mule to give her whatever she wanted, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what I mean by that. But sovereignty for a man comes down to 5 things. A man's got to be self-sufficient in life, right? You don't want to be somebody who's relying on other people. So you got to have financial sovereignty. Why? Well, you don't want to be relying on the government for a handout or your family. Like if you're a young man, you don't want to be relying on your mom and dad to keep you solvent. You need to be keeping yourself solvent, right? So that's financial sovereignty. Well, physical sovereignty, you want to be in good health. You don't want to be relying on somebody to push you around in a wheelchair, right? Paul, you want to be in good health. So you got to have physical sovereignty. Intellectual sovereignty. Well, think for yourself. Don't let the government think for you. God, look at the last 2 years. All the crap they've been telling us is proven to be at best misleading and at worst an outright lie. I said an outright lie. That was fun. An outright lie. So you gotta be able to think for yourself, right? Emotional sovereignty. You can't need somebody. You can't be some needy little bitch of a man who needs his woman. You should be able to do just fine without her. That doesn't mean you don't want her, but you can't be a needy little bitch. Women don't like needy little bitch men. And Spiritual sovereignty, well, you got to have a relationship with your maker. For those who don't, right, who are just lost like driftwood in a raging river, they're never going to be more to anything, to some purpose bigger than themselves. So to me, those are the 5 pillars of sovereignty. And it basically is another way of saying the 5 pillars of self-sufficiency.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it is really important to men. And I do think that a lot of men, they're too passive in their life. They're just, what is it? Bob Proctor used to say this. Most people tiptoe through life hoping that they make it safely to death. That's it's like, that's no way to live, and especially for a man, I think.
I agree. Funny you mentioned Bob Proctor, but he's from the same city I live in. He's from Toronto, and he just passed away late last year. I was working on having him come on my business podcast, and he agreed in principle. We haven't found a date yet, so I was really saddened by that. I heard about his death too. He's in a better place now, though. He bought a house on Proctor Street. Bob Proctor lived on Proctor Street in Toronto on purpose.
Did he? That sounds like him. Yeah. All right.
That was awesome. Yeah. But Henry David Thoreau, in his immortal series of essays on Walden Pond, talked about how most people live lives of quiet desperation. You don't want to be that kind of man. You don't want to be living a life of quiet desperation. You want to live a life where you grab it by both hands and you're just living large. You're going after the things you want. You're daring mighty things. You're dreaming big dreams. That's what a man's all about. Man's got to be choosing a purpose for himself, getting out there and making it happen for himself. Because if he's not, he's going to be nobody. He's not going to feel good about himself. He's certainly going to be nobody who's attracted to a woman.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Nikki, I didn't know this about you when we last spoke, but in doing my research, I found that you've written a couple of books.
Eight to be exact.
Eight books. Oh, okay. The 2 I found though, just on Amazon, were The Thought Leader's Journey, and you co-wrote The Power of Connecting. Can you tell us a little bit about those, and maybe, a brief snippet on your other books?
So the first book I wrote was called Finish Line Thinking: How to Think and Win Like a Champion. That was a #1 international bestseller in a lot of countries. We sold thousands and thousands of copies. It was really cool. I used to work with a bunch of Olympic gold medal athletes in track and field. My lady is a 3-time Guinness World Record holder for running 12 hours on a treadmill. So I've studied the mindset of, gold medal athletes, top thinkers, the #1 salesperson in real estate, the #1 entrepreneur in a particular industry. And I distilled it down to 13 principles of how champions think and win. So that was my first book. It was very successful. And then I wrote a children's book called Kathy Capitalist and Johnny Jobmakers for kids under the age of 8. It's illustrated. It's about teaching them the principles of free enterprise capitalism and freedom. Great little book. If you got kids under the age of 8, go pick up a copy. Then I wrote a book called The Thought Leader's Journey. That's written as a parable, a fable of life. It's the story of a young man named Paulo who was working for a big bad tech corporation, and he longs to have his own business. So this is the story of how he goes through the journey of actually making that happen. I wrote The Power of Connecting: How to Activate Profitable Relationships by Serving Your Network. That book is about really delving into your own connections, your own network, and leveraging them to grow your business. You are one transformational connection away from a transformational change in your business. That's one of the things that I believe seen happen for myself and tons of people. So that's in there. It's a very well-researched book, very well done. I co-wrote it with the owner of BNI Canada. Really, really great book. And then my latest book that just came out is called How to Create a $1 million a year income. I co-wrote that with Perry Wong. He's a top insurance broker in Canada who's been making over 7 figures a year for the better part of a decade. I'm his coach, so we put the book together on how to go about doing that. And I wrote a political book called The Great Patriot Protest and Boycott Book, The Priceless Guide for Christians, Conservatives, and Trump Warriors on how to cancel culture and take back America. I wrote that with Wayne Allen Root. And I wrote 2 editions of Finish Line Thinking. So that's the 8, and I've got 2 or 3 more books in the works right now.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Going back to your power of connecting, so that one talks a lot about networking. Then you said,
yeah, networking, going into your own network, leveraging that network to grow your network. Because listen, here's the deal. Let's say you want to grow your business and you have, say, 500 contacts in your phone, in your LinkedIn, and your whatever, and about 50 of them are people you really love. They love you. You get along. You've done business with them. You're good friends. What's the best way to meet 50 more people like them? Through them. Who knows more people like you than you, Paul? If I want to get to know more coaches in the space of working with men, do I go talk to Paul or do I go talk to a real estate agent? I go talk to Paul, right? It just makes perfect sense. So you go to your best people. You say, look, hey, Paul, it's Nicky, man. Listen, bud, we're good friends. I love you like a brother. I've known you for a long time. Listen, I want to know more people like you. And the way I figure it, the best way to know more people like you is through you. So who do you know that's just like you? Great guy, in the space, blah, blah, blah. You'll probably be able to just look through your phone and figure somebody out. But then the next thing I'll say is, I don't want to just be a taker. I want to be a giver. Who do you need to meet? I've been thinking about a couple people I think you might meet, maybe a potential client, whatever. I'll be proactive and give you that name. And then after I give you that name, I'll even say, who else do you need to meet? So that way I go through my best 50 connections. I can have another 50 great connections. Mm-hmm. If you're smart about that, that's 20 potential clients for you right there if you're a businessman.
Yeah. I've said it before on the podcast too. I have a dating coach friend his whole spiel basically is teaching men how to meet women through social circles, and largely all he's teaching is networking. And so every time I have him on, we talk about this, but basically every job I've gotten in my career has been mostly because of people I know, not necessarily what I know. Is at least got me, an introduction, my foot in the door, and then I can showcase what I know. But it was those connections and people like saying, "Hey, you should meet my friend, my friend Paul. He knows X, Y, and Z." That got me as far as I've gotten in my career for sure. So so like we talked about sales being such a powerful tool for men to know, networking is also excellent skill to learn.
Agreed. 100%.
So 100%. Yeah, check out his book on power of connecting on that. Now you and I connected, speaking of connecting, because you saw my interview with Dr. Glover after you read his No More Mr. Nice Guy book. What were your biggest takeaways from No More Mr. Nice Guy? And what do you think men can learn most from that book?
Well, the fellow who is the proverbial nice guy actually isn't a very nice guy. That's the first thing I got from that. He's actually a passive-aggressive asshole. You know what I mean? He's using being nice as a strategy in order to get something. And that's what makes him not so nice. It's gross. It's not real. And so the first thing I got is stop being nice to get women to like you, go to bed with you, whatever. Right? Yeah. Be nice because, you're nice, not because you want something. Right? Yeah. And you need to dig deep, because you might listen to this and go, no, but I am nice because I'm nice, but you're probably not. You probably decided that was the right strategy and mask and persona for you to fit yourself into. So
I think male feminists fall into this category.
Yeah.
They're putting on a facade. Hilarious. Yeah, that's sad.
Hilarious. It's like, the prime minister of my country, Justin Trudeau, calls himself a feminist, and I would argue he's anything but a feminist. Mm-hmm. He decided that he was going to have half his cabinet be composed of women. So he promoted some women who weren't qualified, quite candidly, because there weren't as many women elected as there were men. The pool of candidates to choose from was bigger with the men, but he promoted women who weren't qualified. But he did promote one woman who was very qualified, Jody Wilson-Raybould, and she caught him breaking the law, and she called him out on it. He wasn't such a feminist when that happened. He kicked her out of cabinet. You know what I mean?
Crazy.
Yeah, right. So this nice guy, hyper feminist dude, that was one thing I got from it. The second thing I got from it is, if you're being nice and it's in order to, then you're actually saying no to being who you really are. Mm-hmm. And you're not an attractive person when you're being fake, because people they can smell it a mile away. They don't know why they don't like you, but they don't like you because you are fake. And there'll be people go, but he's such a nice guy, but he really isn't, because he's not being real. He's not being honest. So be yourself. Be yourself. Don't be nice. Like, listen, if we all do this, I've done this recently, but if somebody makes an offer to sell you something. So I'm a knife collector, right? And I spend a lot of money on knives because I just freaking love the things. So there's a knife collector that was on my podcast. He passed away, and his son has a bunch of his knives and is, selling the collection off. And he was a custom knife maker. And there's a particular knife of his with a Patriot flag on the handle that I wanted to buy. And when the knife came out, that knife was $500. Well, he offered to sell it to me for $800. And I said, well, $800, it's a lot. He says, well, listen, man, right now, this isn't available through dealers anymore because my dad's dead. And I don't think I can get it to you much cheaper because I got to buy it from somebody. I got to pay him a certain amount of money. And he said, okay, I'll give it to you for $750. And I didn't really like the price, but I liked the knife. And I said, okay, I'll buy it. And the truth of the matter is I was just trying to look cool a little bit. I could have said no to him and said, fuck off, I don't want the knife. But I didn't. Mm-hmm. Now, is it a good investment? Well, the maker of the knife is dead. He's not going to be making any more of them. It is a beautiful knife. Within the world of collections, probably going to go up in value. But all that's justification after the fact of me going against what I knew in the moment, which was, nah, I don't buy it. Mm. So I bought it,
Yeah.
But there's, is it the worst thing I've ever done? No, it's not. But also, it was an example of me being a nice guy in this situation. Sure.
One thing I tell guys too, because they'll read that book or they'll hear the title of it, and they'll say, oh, I can't be nice to women. I guess that means I must be an asshole to them. It's like, no, you can be I always say, you can be a good guy, but you can never be a nice guy, because it's specific. I'm specifically talking about nice guy syndrome, which is what Dr. Glover's talking about in that book, which a lot of guys suffer from.
100%. Jordan Peterson has a wonderful quote. He said, a nice man is not a good man. A good man is a dangerous man who has it under voluntary control. I freaking love that quote, bro. I love that quote.
Yeah, he's a monster, right?
Yeah, man, he's great. He's from Toronto, man. He's from my hometown. He's one of my homeboys.
There's a lot of
Jordan P, baby.
I gotta say there's some good guys in the men's space that come out of Canada. Ryan Stone, Rich Cooper, great guys. They're Canadians.
Yeah, Rich is from Toronto too, man.
Yeah.
I had him on my podcast once. Wanted to have him back on after his new book came out. And I said, hey, Rich, want to come back on? I sent him an email and he said, yeah, let's do it. And then he disappeared, but we'll get him on one of these days again.
Yeah, he's been busy lately. So have you read his new book, Unplugged Alpha?
Yeah, Unplugged Alpha. Yeah. That's when I called him. I said, hey, I read your new book. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that book. That's one that I've added to my multiple read rotation. It's very clear and concise. Have you read Rational Male by Rollo Tomassi at all?
I purchased it. I haven't read the whole thing yet. It's a bit of a dense book, man. I've listened to Rollo speak. Yeah, it's a dense book. It's not written as a readable book.
No, it's deep. One of the things I talked to Rich about was how his book, I feel like a lot of guys read this stuff. They get into, No More Mr. Nice Guy. They read Rational Male, stuff like that. And then a lot of guys get really butthurt and hate women, And so that's what I love about Rich's books, because it's short, concise. It explains the stuff, but also tells men what they can do about it. It gives them actionable advice, which I think a lot of men need. They need a little direction.
My books are all short and sweet. My first book was like, when I wrote the first edition of Finish Line Thing, it was just 30 pages. The second edition is 42 pages. My other books are all between 100 and 150 pages. My philosophy of book reading, and I read big, thick books. So I've read Robert Greene's book, like the 33 Strategies of War and shit like that. And I like long books. I read Clouds of Glory, which is a biography of General Robert E. Lee, and that thing's a monstrous book, And I read Witness by Whittaker Chambers. Now, if you've never read Witness, you want a study in courage, you need to read that book. That is an incredible book. That book and the accusations that Whittaker Chambers leveled against Alger Hiss made Richard Nixon and propelled him to the White House, quite frankly, because he's the one who went after Alger Hiss. And amazing stuff. But books need to be short and sweet and to the point, because that's when men will read them. Yeah,
unfortunately, because a lot of guys are inherently lazy, I think. But I'm the same way. And I listen to everything on audiobook just because for me it's effortless learning. I can go up on a run, listen to it. I can listen to it in my car, and every once in a while I'll get a book. Like, I listened to Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power. It's like 15 hours long or something. I look at the timeline of it and I go, good Lord. All right, time to dig deep in this one because it's going to take me a while to get through. But yeah, shorter books I'm a little more open to, for sure.
100%.
So I mentioned earlier, I listened to your interview with Ryan Mickler on the Order of Man podcast. One of the things you were talking about is you have a real problem with the term toxic masculinity, and I do too. But what's your particular problem with it?
Well, it's the most sexist, evil term there is. It's about painting an entire gender as toxic. Imagine if you said that about women. Mm-hmm. Or about folks who consider themselves trans. You kidding me? It would not be allowed. It shouldn't be allowed around men. Someone ever uses that phrase around me, I'm going to give them an earful.
Yeah. I like to say that there's no such thing as toxic masculinity or toxic femininity. There's just toxic people.
Agreed.
But yeah, like, oh man, it's such an overused term. I get accused of it whenever I make my social media posts and stuff like that. I always get some kind of feminist in the comment or whatever, calling me a misogynist or this toxic masculinity. Why are you perpetuating this? I'm like, there's nothing toxic about masculinity.
Nothing. Masculinity built the world, brother. Masculinity built freedom. Masculinity built the society. Masculinity defeated Nazism. Masculinity won the Cold War. Masculinity built the Panama Canal. Are you kidding me? That is wonderful stuff. Hey, femininity is equally wonderful in different ways. But to pretend that masculinity isn't needed is crazy. I mean, to me, one of the reasons why I think the enemy is coming after us by attacking men and masculinity, because they know if they turn us against each other, they can divide and rule us. And that's a strategy as old as time itself. Julius Caesar used it to conquer Gaul and Germania.
Yeah, you also mentioned, I think you mentioned it in our conversation on your podcast, but you also mentioned it on Ryan's podcast too, about how Russia planned this. And you said there's an actual book on it. You want to tell that story real quick?
Sure. The book's called Willing Accomplices. It's by Kent Clisby, a former CIA case officer. And the story that he tells inside that book is extremely powerful, which is that in 1917, when Vladimir Lenin effected the first communist revolution in world history and Russia went communist, he wanted to make the whole world communist. That was his plan, worldwide revolution. But standing in his way was who he called the main adversary, the United States. And he knew he could not frontally assault the United States and defeat it. So he realized the best way to defeat the United States was to subvert it from within. He was going to use the United States' very openness against it. Now, the very first, progressive, almost Marxist president that America had was Woodrow Wilson. Quite possibly the worst president in American history. He was an out-and-out bigot. He was an open bigot and an open progressive. and he wanted to do away with the Constitution. He couldn't, thankfully. And he was in charge when William Unserberg and company came to the United States. So there's people who speculate if he allowed this because, America knew some of what was going on, but wasn't on the ball enough to do anything about it. But over a period of decades, the KGB and later on the Chinese Communist Ministry of State Security sent people here to basically turn us against one another. If you look at textbooks from, say, the state of North Carolina from 1910, they're unabashedly patriotic. In 2010, they're hating the country and talking about everything that's bad about the United States. And that's bullshit. That's why we have to have good men stand up. That's why Ryan Mickler's are necessary. Paul Bowers are necessary. Nicky Billou are necessary, brother. Yeah,
I agree. One thing I found refreshing, I lived in California for about 15 years, and my daughter started school there. And in the public school system there, they didn't do Pledge of Allegiance, which I grew up on. We did Pledge of Allegiance like all the way through, I think, junior high school and stuff like that. We didn't really do it in high school, but high school is kind of a different game because you don't really have a homeroom or anything like that. But we did it growing up. Like I knew it, and I came from a real patriotic family, and so they didn't do that in California. And then when we moved back to Colorado, I live in a small town here, and it's a very rural, traditional, conservative type cowboy town where I live, and the public schools here still teach it. And when I first moved here and got my kids into school and found that out, I was like, "That's awesome! That's so great." And a lot of people, they complain about being proud of your country as, "Oh, that's white nationalism." It's such bullshit, It's like there's
a lie.
There's nothing wrong with being proud of your country. I don't think. I don't care what country you're from.
Are you kidding me? The United States of America in 2008 elected a black man president in a white majority country. Mm-hmm. So over 40% of American whites voted for a black man to be their chief executive. Trust me when I tell you, this will not happen anywhere else. Mm-hmm. Trust me when I tell you this. People are very tribal in the rest of the world. They will not vote for someone who is not of their tribe to be in charge of their nation's destiny. It just won't happen. Mm-hmm. And my answer to everybody who says America is racist is they elected a black man president. What are you talking about? Not just elected him, reelected him. Mm-hmm. It's a nation where anything's possible. It's a nation where everything good happens. You can be anybody from any background. You can be the poorest of poor people. You can still make it.
Yeah.
Even people who hate America, like LeBron James and Colin Kaepernick, are making millions because they have a talent that's valued in the American marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I get frustrated with people where they're like, "Oh, no, you had more opportunities because of where you grew up or because of the color of your skin and stuff like that." I'm like, look, you can think that, but literally everyone has the same exact opportunities. My mom grew up in in basically a shack in the middle of nowhere, northern Colorado. They had an outhouse because they didn't have running water. They had a water pump. Like I'm talking dirt poor poverty shit, like they basically were living like the old prairie days, and my mom, bless her heart, didn't want to live that way. So she found a way to go to college, get an education, and she became a nurse. She became a registered nurse and made more money than her parents did. And so then I grew up in basically a lower middle class family with my mom basically being the major breadwinner because my dad, just bless his heart too, he didn't really have that much ambition, but they got by and they had no way to pay for me to go to college. So I was like, well, how can I pay for college? So I joined the military. I figured it out, and now I'm doing better than even my parents are doing. My brother's doing better than my parents ever did. It's not like it's impossible. You just need to take advantage of the opportunities that are available. And guess what? Like, I'm not saying it's for everybody, but the military is basically available no matter where you live in the United States. If you live in the ghetto, there's a lot of guys I knew in the military that joined it to get out of the ghetto.
Yeah.
If you look for it, there's opportunities. That's all I'm saying there.
Massive opportunities. It's the greatest nation on the face of this here earth, brother. Good old US of A. In Canada, like, listen, I'm Canadian. Canada's a great country too. I'll put us right up there with the US. But honestly, anybody who's born in Canada, the United States, a Western democracy, basically won the lottery, man. And for those of us like me who are immigrants who came here, man, we are like a kid in a candy store who's being told you can have any candy you want. You don't have to pay for it. Woo-hoo, let's go.
See, as I love talking to immigrants like that are like grateful for the opportunities, because they really do appreciate the opportunities. And a lot of people that were born here are sniveling little brats, and they just don't understand how good they've got it. Switching gears again here, you mentioned how after your divorce, you basically found a coach, right? That ran a men's group after your divorce. Can you tell us about that experience a little bit?
Well, listen, I was not in good shape, man. I felt lower than whale shit, like I felt like a loser. I felt like I'd let down myself, my family, my kids, most of all. I didn't know a way out. So someone said, you should go be a part of this men's group. They help people that are going through hell. So I said, all right, I'll join. And it was a relief, and it was confronting at the same time. It was a relief because there was someone who said, it's going to be okay. You're going to figure this out. And it was confronting because I had to confront all the bullshit about how I was showing up in my marriage that had, contributed to its demise, right? And the good news was that being a part of the men's organization became a part of my life. Ever since then, I've been a part of the men's organization. I run one now, Sovereign Man, right? We do meetings pretty much for once a week, 52 weeks a year. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's really great. That was one of the things that I took away from Dr. Robert Glover's book too, is how important it is for men to spend time with other men. Because before that, I don't know how it was I mean, you sound like a guy who's really, big into business and connections and stuff like that. You probably had a lot more connections outside of your marriage, but I wasn't. I was that guy who I had friends, but they were forced friends. There were people I knew from work, and I only hung out with them at work. And then otherwise I was home. And then I relied on my wife to be my best friend and stuff like that. But I didn't have friends outside of that. And it's just not healthy for men to do that.
It's not.
Yeah. And it's not good for the relationship either, to put that burden on her to be your best friend. It's just, she needs a break, she needs a break too. And you need a break. And hanging out with other men is, actually, there's studies that show that it boosts testosterone. Like, we need that tribal experience, being around other dudes. So
100%, man, 100%. You got to have men in your life. They're going to push you. They're going to challenge you. And that does bring testosterone up when you do that. And your wife is not your sounding board for everything. Your wife is your wife. Your job is to provide, protect, as Ryan Mickler says, preside, be a leader in your family, go bring home the bacon, protect your family, do good things to move the family forward. But if you're having problems, you shouldn't be going to your wife and going, oh, honey, I don't know. What do you think I should do? That's what you're meant for. Not to say that you can't talk to your wife or you shouldn't talk to your wife, but if you unburden yourself on her, that's not good. If you're going to go see your woman with a problem, you better come forward with some sort of solution. She doesn't want to just hear your problems. That's what she wants to do with her girlfriends. If she starts thinking about you like you're one of her girlfriends, your relationship's dead. Dead, deader than a doornail.
Yeah, I make videos about this all the time too. Like, don't bring your problems to your girl. Same for your boys or your therapist. And because women like a lot of guys are like, well, how am I supposed to have an actual relationship with her if we can't solve problems together? It's like, like you said, you need to, she's relying on you to be her rock. She wants you to be the one that's coming up with the solutions. And if you're not doing that, she's going to lose attraction for you. And she's eventually going to get tired of it. And she's going to look for a guy that's a little more centered, that does have his shit together a little bit more. And you don't need that in your life. It is so much easier to just talk it over with your boys. And your boys, if you're being a complainer or a whiner, eventually your boys are going to be like, dude, do something about it or shut up about it.
Exactly.
Your girl's not going to do that.
No, she's going to say, tell me more. Like sometimes when I go to my woman, I had a hard day. She goes, yeah, you want to tell me about it? And I look at her and I go, I just did.
One thing I do with my girl, she listens to the podcast too. So, hey, babe. One thing I do with her is, I'll have a crappy day. I'll either bring a solution with it, or if I don't have a solution in mind, I go, but you know what? It's no big deal. I got it. I'll figure this out. And then I leave it at that. And she knows, what the game's like. So she doesn't pry or anything like that. She's like, good, I know you got it. And then goes back to doing her stuff. We have a great relationship. Works out awesome.
That's smart. It does, because if you complain to her too much, she's going to lose faith in you. She's going to lose faith in you as a capable man. And you want to come across as a capable man who's got his shit together and can make things happen.
Yeah. That's the bottom line.
It is the bottom line of every relationship. A woman wants a man, a rock, somebody who isn't easily ruffled, somebody who's capable, who can keep it together and get shit done. And has ambition. A woman will put up with a man who doesn't have a lot of money if he does have a lot of ambition, because she invests in the man's potential, right? But that's something a lot of men don't get, right? And a man, though, like, listen, we're like, okay, is she hot? All right. Yeah. Does she like to have sex with me? Does she cook me meals? Does she tell me what a great guy I am? I call it 3F, like feed him, fuck him, and flatter him. That's what a man wants.
It's as simple as that. We are such simple creatures. I think it's so funny.
So complicated, right?
It's so all these women, they're like reading books about us. Like most relationship books are written for women. If you read them, like the 5 love languages or whatever, and men are for Mars, women are for Venus. It's all written for women. But we're just not that complicated. They just are too much in their heads, like that. But women, on the other hand, are complicated. But it's not that hard to figure out what makes them tick and to work within the rules of the game. It's not that hard. But a lot of guys overthink it, but it's really just like,
I agree.
They respond to strength. They want you to be their rock. And so if you're ever in doubt, just be like, what is the strongest position I can take on here? And then go with that. And you're usually pretty good. So
very true, man. Very true. I agree with all that.
I think I have one last question for you here. When I was on your podcast, you talk about having, and I'm paraphrasing here, but basically thousands of men like us spreading the word and reaching thousands of more men and so on and so on. So eventually, we have, a quarter of the world's population that is bringing masculinity back. What's the best way you think that we can do that and spread this message?
We need leaders, man. So Ryan Michler has 1,000 people in Order of Man. And that may sound like a lot of men, and it's a wonderful business for him, but it's really not. It's like a sliver of a village. 10,000 men in Order of Man would be a tiny village. Mm-hmm. If we had 10,000 leaders like Ryan Michler, each of them leading 10,000 men, that's 10,000 times 10,000, that's just 100 million men. You think about that, 100 million men. There are over 4 billion men on the planet, right? So with 100 million men, we can change the world. But we need more leaders. We need more people doing the type of work Michler's doing. So I want to see him get to 10,000. I want to see you get to 10,000. I want to see me get to 10,000. I want to see a whole bunch of men get to 10,000. because that's how we're going to change the world. We need our little villages that are populated with masculine men that really are done with the world being the shithole that it is in so many ways, and are ready to make the world a beautiful paradise once again.
Yeah. I think that's a great statement to wrap up with. Nikki, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. The podcast, again, the Thought Leader Revolution, and also the Sovereign Man. Why don't you tell people where they can find you online?
Well, those are two good places. I'm going to make an offer to anyone listening to this who's a man who wants to talk about any man issue whatsoever. If you go to my main website, it's called ecircleacademy.com. That's my main business website. There's a button in the top right-hand corner that says book a success call. It's usually for a business call, but just go there. There's a little form attached with it. Tell me you heard me on Paul's show and you want to have a conversation. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about the things that matter to you as a man. And I just make myself available to any man who wants to do that. Now, I'll tell you this. I know most men aren't going to take advantage of that because that's just the way men are. They're going to think, oh, yeah, it's a good idea. Then they're not going to do it. But I want to get you to take advantage of it. If even one man calls me, I'll be happy. When I was on Ryan Mickler's podcast, 43 men took advantage of that. And that was amazing to have conversations with 43 men.
Yeah. And he's got a big following too. So huge following. But that just goes to show men are a little too prideful to like reach out and ask for help. I have a Patreon myself, and I'm trying to build a men's community, and I know guys are interested in stuff like that, but they just are afraid to take that leap. So I think that's great that you're offering that free phone call.
Don't let your fear choke out your dream and ambition in business or in life. If you like what you hear, you want to get on a call, you should do it. And I say this to any man who listens to you on my show or Ryan on my show, whoever, talk to these dudes. Talk to them because they may have something for you that I don't, and their community may make sense for you. And that's the truth. You got to do it. You got to take advantage of it. And if you're a businessman and you're listening to this and you want to talk business, we'll talk some business. And, if you have a podcast and you're listening to this and you want to have me come on your show, great. Or have Paul come on your show, great. But take action. Anyone listening to this, the one thing I want to leave you with is be an action taker. Do something. Don't just listen to this and go, that was great, and then forget all about it. Take some action out of something you heard here on the show today. And that's a wrap.
That's a great message, Nikki. Thank you so much for joining me. I will give you the rest of your day back, sir.
Yeah, it was awesome being here, man. God bless you.
Nikki, thanks again for joining me, man. I apologize that this episode came out so far after the interview that I had with that you did with me on your show. But that's just the way it works sometimes in this business. But you're a great guy, fun guy to talk to. I like that we're both Leos and we're both born on August 12th. So I'm serious, man. Reach out to your buddy Ryan Mickler. Let's do this. Let's get this trio happening. Let's break the internet. All right, guys. Hey, again, I want to mention the Patreon. Help support the show. Visit patreon.com/comeonmanpod. The link is in the description. There's 5 tiers available. The lowest tier, the bare minimum, guys, $5 a month. $5 a month. Skip going to Starbucks one day and support the show with the $5 per month, man. It helps more than and it helps spread the message to more men. All right, that's all I have this week, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got a lot out of it, and we'll see you next week.
This has been the Come On Man podcast. New full episodes served hot every Monday morning on your favorite podcast platform of choice. So subscribe now. Follow Paul on social media. The links are in the description. Now, go out and get it.